During the late 1880s, in the wake of Darwin's theory of evolution, criminology linked human behavior to biological factors. Distinctive physical traits and facial features were believed to reveal criminal types who were seen as more ape-like creatures, not as fully developed as most humans. Research into this area probably did little more than reinforce prevailing ethnic stereotypes and prejudices, and it likely had the police and the public looking for the wrong man. In fact, what might have served the Ripper best was a deceptively ordinary appearance, one that would not draw attention during a time of great fear and suspicion. Today, behavioral scientists called profilers go beyond physical characteristics to unravel the twisted motives of the killers they pursue.
Profiling is the study of an unsolved crime of violence with the goal of arriving at characteristics and traits of the unidentified offender. Age, race, marital status, arrest history, educational history, that type of thing. The purpose of a profile is not to identify a particular person, but rather to identify a personality type.
A century after the murders, the FBI's Behavioral Sciences Unit constructed a psychological profile of Jack the Ripper from evidence available at the time.
We had available to us the autopsy reports, photographs, crime scene sketches, a map of the area in which the crimes had occurred with the location of each of those crimes. We also had, most importantly, the victimology. The people who were, in fact, the victims of Jack the Ripper, we had their history. They were all prostitutes. They were all derelicts, alcoholics. They all lived in the same vicinity. They were all mutilated in a very, very similar manner.
If you accept this guy had a pathological hatred of women, maybe that is what he would take. That is what he would see as, you know, the thing that a woman's got and a man hasn't. So maybe he if he hates women that much, the uterus and the womb is the thing he will cut out, because that defines a woman.
By mutilating the victim, he in a sense neuters her, he desexes her, and she's no longer something to fear. And he also has that opportunity to carry out all of his anger, which is primarily directed toward women. Jack the Ripper is motivated by anger and a sense of fear toward women.
As vicious as his killings were, there's no evidence that the Ripper raped his victims.
In order to be a sexual crime, one does not have to commit rape or any type of recognizable sexual assault. Jack the Ripper's crimes were sexually motivated. When we profiled Jack the Ripper, we profiled him as being an individual who was a white male, late 20s to mid-30s, an individual who was an inadequate person, an individual who was a loner, preferred his own company to the company of others.
The FBI categorized the Ripper as a disorganized killer, one whose methods are erratic and impulsive.
We thought that because of the locations where he committed 4 of the 5 crimes. They were outdoors, they were on the streets or in a courtyard, a very high-risk crime. In other words, whoever this person was almost oblivious to the risk. All the bodies were quickly discovered. So there's not a great deal of planning that went into those crimes. All of those things told us that we were not dealing with a rocket scientist in this case. We said that he lived right in that location. He was very, very comfortable with those crime scene locations. Very, very comfortable because, as I recall, in one case, a police officer walked by and saw the victim, came back 20 minutes later, and the victim was found dead at that same location.
Others believe the Ripper fits the description of the organized offender, citing his ability to engage his victims, the consistency of his methods, and the fact that he left few clues.
Jack the Ripper is a sexual deviant whose attacks become, to my mind, increasingly frenzied. He runs risks, but nobody actually sees him committing any of the crimes, despite the fact there are considerable numbers of people about on the night in question.
In the end, however, profilers admit that theirs is an inexact science at best.
Profiling is nothing more than an opinion of the individual preparing the profile. It's not a science, it's an art.
November 9th, 1888. Over a month after the double event, an uneasy calm had settled on the Whitechapel district. Mary Jane Kelly, a young woman in her 20s, is seen by a witness leaving a pub with a man sometime around 3 a.m. She invites her companion inside her lodging house at 13 Miller's Court. Just before 4 a.m., 3 women living in the room above Kelly reported hearing a cry of murder. But it was hours before her fate was known. She was the 5th victim killed in 10 weeks, all of them murdered within a mile of each other.
Mary Kelly was behind with a rent, and a landlord sent someone round to sort of ask her for the rent. And when the messenger didn't get any answer by knocking on the door, he went round to the side of the room where there was a broken window, pushed out the rags and newspaper, and putting his hand through the glass, he pulled back the curtain, and then he saw the body of Mary Kelly.
It was a total evisceration of the body. He'd severed the head from the body. He then skinned the face. He'd opened it from the throat to the groin, from the knee to the groin was opened up.
A horrific sight, even for veteran detectives Abberline and Swanson. This was the Ripper's most vicious attack yet.
In victim number 5, for the very first time, he had a private environment. The victim took him to her flat. And at that point in time, he was not going to be disturbed. So he could engage in every type of deviant, lustful desire that he had without the possibility of being disturbed and without any time constraints.
From those sort of killings, once you've done one kind of rip and done one thing, then it gets no thrill for you. You've done it. So each rip gets worse than the one before to get the thrill and the sexual thrill out of it.
Political pressures and the strain of the Ripper murders weighed heavily on Commissioner Warren. The day before Mary Kelly's killing, he resigned his position. Assistant Commissioner Robert Anderson remained on as supervisor with Detectives Swanson and Abberline investigating, but police efforts seemed hopelessly thwarted. In a desperate attempt to find Mary Kelly's killer, government authorities offered a pardon to anyone supplying information leading to the apprehension and conviction of the murderer.
Now that indicates that they thought that more than one person was involved or that somebody had information about it. It's a very odd move to make, to go to the Home Office and for the Home Secretary to issue a pardon in advance to a co-conspirator.
The pardon offer went unanswered, and for weeks nothing happened. Then the murders stopped. Just 3 months after Mary Kelly's death, the police reduced their patrols in Whitechapel.
The interesting thing for me is the murders stop, but in less time than the time between 2 of the murders in the middle of a series, the whole inquiry has stood down. So I think the cops obviously knew something that we don't know.
It was police policy not to release information about unsolved crimes or the progress of ongoing investigations. But as a result, it opened the door to many theories, some wildly far-fetched, about the identity of the Ripper.
These theories started in 1888 and they've been going ever since. He's been an abortionist, he's been a female abortionist, Jill the Ripper.
One of the more bizarre ones quite recently, I find this really bizarre, is that of Lewis Carroll. The author of Alice in Wonderland has now been named as Jack the Ripper. And then, of course, in recent years, you've had a whole range of theories built around the British royal family in the person of Queen Victoria's grandson, the Duke of Clarence, who dies within 4 years of the Ripper murders. The
royal theory is in fact, a theory involving the Freemasons, in that the Duke of Clarence, or as he was then, the Prince Eddie, the son of the Prince of Wales, and heir presumptive to the throne, was involved in a liaison with a Catholic girl, which would obviously not be the thing for a member of the royal family to do.
According to this theory, the Ripper's last victim, Mary Kelly, knew of the prince's illicit affair and was blackmailing him.